Hi, I'm JT,
I'm Matt.
and these are 10 things you didn't know about If Only You Were Lonely. We'll start with an easy one, I guess. We tracked the record over about 6.5, 7 weeks in Hoboken, New Jersey. And, a bunch of guys from Ohio, we didn't know anything about Hoboken, New Jersey. We learned probably maybe 2.5 weeks in that it was directly across the river from New York City. So we weren't very good on geography because we're from Ohio. But
We just knew it was across the street from a grocery.
yeah, it definitely was. ShopRite, to be exact. So our producer, his name is David Bendeth. He's recorded and produced a bunch of awesome records. Our manager at the time kind of turned us on to him, but we were a little bit skeptical because we didn't know him, we didn't know anything about him. So he offered to do a song for us, which we'd just got offered a movie soundtrack for the Bad News Bears. So we recorded this song, and they did not use the song. They did not like it. It was too screamy for them. The song was Light Sleeper. So instead of giving them the song, we kept it, and we had a good experience with David, so we decided to track If Only You Were Lonely. And Light Sleeper would go on to make the album, and I believe all we did was kind of recut a few vocal parts and stuff like that and remixed everything, reamped some guitars. But that track was actually recorded about, I think probably 4 months before we hit the studio again that time. While we were recording If Only You Were Lonely, everything was already written. We'd already done that portion, but we'd received a watermarked copy of In the Wake of Determination by Story of the Year. And I remember Matt, Casey, and I sitting down and listening to that album a bunch, mainly on the way to a show in Ithaca College. We had a show in the break of on one of the weekends. And I remember listening to that album and being like, man, we got to track more guitars on this thing because this thing sounds insane. It was kind of funny because we knew the band at the time, but it kind of dates it a little bit because the label sent out a watermarked CD in an attempt to stop illegal downloading. Like, it was, I remember it was like a yellow wrapper, and the back of it looked hilarious. And when you put it on, it said, this is, a watermark CD. You cannot do anything with it, but listen to it 3 times. But we could listen to it more than 3 times. I think that was just a disclaimer. But we remember hearing that record and just thinking, man, this thing sounds incredible, absolutely incredible. The guitars are just way out in the front, extremely loud, extremely heavy, and I just remember thinking, man, we got to track more guitars. So immediately when we got back from that show at Ithaca College, we tracked a shit ton more guitars. During the middle of the recording session, we were challenged one night, very late at night, because David would always tell us, hey, we're going to start at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and then he would stroll in at about 3 p.m. So one night we were kind of aggravated on that because we were raring to go every single day, and he was like, all right, well, next time if I'm late, why don't you sit down and write a song? So we were challenged to write a song one day when he was definitely not there, and the night before we were game planning it. But during one of these crazy like midnight sessions, we didn't have anything that was as Hawthorne Heights, we'd never written anything that was kind of personal and ballady. So we started to write this song Decembers. It was just me with an acoustic guitar and Micah sitting down at the piano, and I wouldn't call him a piano player. I would say that he could play a few bouncing chords, and then Matt with kind of a walking bass line a little bit on it. But I just remember sitting there with the guitar, my pen and paper, and trying to write what I would consider to be like a really frustrating moment, which was having to immediately leave my wife to come record an album and not be able to bring her with me. So I wrote the entire words to that while Micah was just sitting there playing 4 or 5 chords over and over, and Matt was playing the bass a little bit, slapping the bass a little
Definitely
bit.
slapping.
And we ended up really liking how everything was going. And I remember listening to, Casey at the time was listening to a ton of Death Cab for Cutie and the Postal Service. And he really wanted to have some sort of like electronic loop or some sort of electronic drum beat.
He always wanted loop.
Yeah, he
I
always.
just remember, can we put sound design at the beginning of that? Stop saying that.
Yeah, we're like, what are
He
you
knows
talking
that
about?
it is.
We were like, what in the hell are you talking about? And then he would play the Postal Service or Death Cab. Like this
Sound
right
design.
here.
Fake drums, got it. Say
Yeah,
that.
so he finally got his wish at the beginning of that, and I do think that it added a great vibe to it. That's one of my favorite parts of that song. Aaron, our drummer at the time, and still good friend, had to learn a very hard lesson while recording If Only You Were Lonely. And that lesson is, when you're done with the drums, that doesn't mean that you can leave and go home and leave the rest of the band to record the album. It seemed like he was just, when we were recording, he was eating a lot of Lucky Charms. And he left for the, I don't know, how long did he leave for? A week, I think.
Yeah, like 3 or 4 days or something. Not long enough where you should throw somebody's stuff away.
Yeah. So they decided, we'll get him. And they took his Lucky Charms and emptied it out on the top of the main trash can that was in the living area. And then put the box. Did you put the box back in? Or
I think we put the box back in, but we made sure that nobody used that trash can so that...
So the whole box
Yeah.
of cereal would be seen.
So on the top. In
thrown
hindsight, should have done it the day before he got home or got back, because the whole time we're there for like 3 days, like, no, not that trash can.
Don't
It's
put
like
anything in there.
really stupid.
Yeah.
But
So
he was mad.
during all studio sessions, it seems like there's a deadline to meet. You're always running down to the wire. We just kept wanting to track things and wanting to put things on there. And we had the idea that we wanted to get our fans involved in the album. So we had a contest to have them actually sing gang vocals with us one day. We led them to a remote location. I believe they met us at the ShopRite parking lots. And we blindfolded them so they couldn't see where the studio was. We ushered them in and let them sing on Where Can I Stab Myself in the Ears, the gang vocals for that. But it was a really awesome experience, and actually 2 of the members of the band Ice Nine Kills actually sang gang vocals before that band was a band yet. So we met those guys like probably maybe 4 years after that, 3 years after that. They were like, hey, remember when you guys recorded the gang vocals in the studio in Hoboken? I was like, yeah. It was like, we were 2 of the guys that were there. And I was like, oh, shit, that's cool. That's a super awesome story. We were recording on the last day, and we were thinking, we just got a couple things left. And I remember we tracked until 2 hours before our flight was supposed to take off. And still just recording backup vocals and sweetening songs and stuff like that. And I remember we eventually had to say, we have to leave or we're going to miss our flight. And of course, Hoboken's right across from New York, and the traffic is absolutely insane. So I remember the engineer, Dan Corneff, was driving us, and he had to drive on the median to get us there in time. And I just remember feeling like, I don't know that a car wreck is worth, missing a flight over, but he got us there. We made our flight, we went home, and I don't know, we probably had like maybe 10 hours off or something, then had to go on an 8-week tour or something like that. To this point in our career, when we recorded the Silence in Black and White and anything we'd ever done previously to that, we'd always been a band that tuned to E standard. We were never like a super heavy band or anything, so I guess bands have been tuning to like C and shit for years, but we were like, no, guitars come in E standard, so this is how we will perform them. And I remember we were sitting in the studio and we're like, nah, we want this song to sound really heavy, so let's try to do it in D standard. So we're, starting to track the thing. We're not thinking of my vocals whatsoever. We just think we want this to sound heavy. And then I remember going and, oh shit, I gotta sing to this now, and it sounds totally different than the version that we wrote. And my voice is kind of, I would say, high-pitched. And I remember thinking, man, it just sounds like I'm talking because it lowers it down so much.
Every song that we've ever had, we now play a half step down, except that one we actually play a half step up.
Yeah.
So the only song we lowered is actually the only one we've raised at this point. Which is really dumb.
Yeah, which is totally ridiculous. And that song is Where Can I Stab Myself in the Ears? Where Can I Stab Myself in the Ears? We could ask where that song title comes from, because it kind of makes no sense. And there's a reason it makes no sense. I would say in our earlier days, we didn't have as thick of skin. So we would kind of pay attention to the message board comments and the shit talking. So this was the first time that we were like, you'd get offended. You'd be like, man, that band sucks. Oh, dude, why do we suck? We spent so much time on this. Why do we suck? But so when we released a press release that we were coming out with a new record, some fool says, oh, Hawthorne Heights is coming out with a new record. Where can I stab myself in the ears? And we all looked at each other. We were all, one of us was reading it out loud, and we were like, in the ears? Where can I stab myself in the ears?
I think that was the next comment.
Yeah.
Somebody made fun of that guy in the next thing, and we thought it was funny.
You would stab yourself in the ears, in the ears.
Right.
So our producer, David Bendeth, was from New York/New Jersey, and we're from Dayton, Ohio. We wanted to bring him to us because we were recording the album in New Jersey, so we wanted to do the pre-production back home. We did the pre-production in a kind of the B room in a studio because we didn't have a rehearsal space at the time because we were always on tour, so we didn't need one. We were either rehearsing someplace else or we could put everything in a basement and just get it done. But we really didn't have to rehearse that much because we were constantly playing live, so we would never be unrehearsed. So during these writing sessions and album rehearsal sessions, we brought David Bendeth to Ohio. And the first thing he asked me, he goes, okay, no problem. I'll come to Ohio. I'll come to you guys, see how you guys do things. What's the nicest hotel in town? And I was like, nicest hotel in town? Hell, I don't know. I live here. So we decided that the Crown Plaza in downtown Dayton was, in fact, the nicest hotel in town. And this is before we're, really well-traveled, before we've stayed any place, before we've been to other countries, things
heard
like
Crown
that.
Plaza in one rap song, we're like, that's it.
Yeah,
It's gotta be that one.
that's going to be the nice hotel. And if you know anything about Dayton, the downtown area of Dayton is not the happening part of Dayton. So that's the Crown Plaza is probably not a very wonderfully regal hotel. I remember
it's a hazy diamond in the rough.
Yeah, I remember him coming back one day. He's like, "Hey, why'd you guys put me in that hotel?" I'm like, "You wanted the nicest hotel in town. You said you like Crown Plaza. There you go." He's like, "Yeah, just walk to this barbecue place."
He liked it, though.
Yeah, at 2 in the morning. It was real weird, but it was good. It was smoking barbecue in downtown Dayton, Ohio. We brought David there, and he was like, we got to go make this record in New York, and we got to go make this thing soon. I can't stay here very much longer. But it was a funny experience. So, we made him entirely uncomfortable during the pre-production, and then he brought us there and made us entirely uncomfortable in New Jersey. So it was a pretty good trade-off. So when we were making our second record, I wouldn't say that there was unneeded pressure or anything like that, but our schedule was extremely tight. We went from Warped Tour 2005 to we had a tiny bit of time off in which I got married, and then we immediately went to the studio. So we had virtually no time. I think we had 2 weeks off in that entire period for a wedding, no honeymoon, zero honeymoon. And then we had to make a record, and then we went to Europe immediately, I believe.
Sounds right.
So you had to take all that and I guess try to figure out how to be normal human beings. But I just remember going to the studio and kind of reworking a lot of lyrics, and just remember, I wouldn't say I was mad at these guys because we were, essentially living a dream. But I just remember being like, man, I don't get to go on a honeymoon so I can sit here and hang out. And then Aaron leaves and we throw his Lucky Charms away. Meanwhile, my new bride is hanging out at home. But I remember turning that kind of frustration, because you got to you really have to realize how fortunate you are. And, a lot of people don't get to make a second record. A lot of people don't get to go to tour in Europe. A lot of people don't get to be on Warped Tour. So I remember the whole time, when I was writing lyrics, trying to not be too negative because the sky was falling on only me because, I just wanted to be home and hanging out with my wife. But every
We
once
forced him. We twisted his arm.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
let's
man.
go gallivant around the world.
they forced me to go tour and make music with my friends is what they forced me to do. But I just remember one thing that was crazy is I would find myself in a dark place and it would just get too depressing even for me. So I had to keep kind of tweaking lyrics and stuff like that. But man, that time period, we didn't do anything except tour and record music. And eventually we got to go to sleep one night.
You would tour and you would only be home to do your laundry.
Yes.
Then you go leave again.